The tactical picture emanating from the Persian Gulf Command Center is unambiguous. A profound shift in force posture has been initiated, signaling a kinetic intent that reverberates from the Strait of Hormuz directly into the inner sanctums of Tehran's Revolutionary Guard. This is not another incremental deployment, nor a routine exercise. This represents a deliberate, calculated repositioning of high-value U.S. military assets, specifically designed to alter the strategic calculus of every belligerent actor in the region. The silence from official channels is as deafening as the undeniable surge of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance assets now saturating the critical maritime choke points and border zones. The question, then, is not merely what new capabilities have been brought to bear, but why, after decades of oscillating between engagement and containment, has this specific, powerful operation been deemed necessary now? And what does it truly reveal about the systemic erosion of American strategic deterrence that forced this hand? This immediate, potent manifestation of American military might, a deployment characterized by a substantial, multi-domain force package, is a direct repudiation of the often whispered over-the-horizon doctrine that has, for too long, defined our posture in volatile regions. It is a clear signal that the era of strategic ambiguity, of measured responses tailored more to global optics than kinetic reality, is waning. We are witnessing a return to a more muscular, forward-leaning stance, a reassertion of America's commitment to freedom of navigation and the stability of critical energy infrastructure, but one born out of a profound frustration with the limitations of previous engagements. This is not simply a reaction. It is a recalibration, and its implications stretch far beyond the immediate geographical flashpoint, touching on the very structural integrity of the American defense apparatus and its capacity to project power decisively against a backdrop of increasing internal administrative bloat and ideological distractions. The specifics of this particular operation, though cloaked in the necessary veil of operational security, point to a highly integrated air and naval component, supported by an enhanced cyber and special operations footprint. We're talking about the rapid forward deployment of a carrier strike group, potentially augmented by an amphibious-ready group carrying a marine expeditionary unit, providing an unparalleled combination of sustained air power, precision strike capabilities, and an agile ground element for contingencies. These are not merely ships and aircraft. They are mobile, sovereign platforms representing decades of defense acquisition strategy, each laden with billions in taxpayer investment, designed for exactly this type of high-stakes power projection. Their presence in the Arabian Sea and the Persian Gulf immediately elevates the threat perception for any adversary contemplating disruptive actions, from harassing commercial shipping to developing clandestine nuclear capabilities. This isn't just a show of force. It's a demonstration of credible escalation ladders, the kind that demands attention not just from state actors, but also from their proxy networks. Yet, we must ask ourselves, what bureaucratic inertia, what entrenched defense industry interests, and what strategic miscalculations have necessitated such an overt, resource-intensive deployment in the first place? The E-ring of the Pentagon is a labyrinth of competing priorities, where budget cycles often dictate strategic imperatives more than real-world threats. While the uniformed warfighter focuses on lethality and readiness, a significant portion of the defense establishment is engaged in a perpetual battle for appropriations, often resulting in platforms designed for yesterday's wars or tailored to satisfy specific congressional districts rather than optimizing for asymmetric threats posed by cunning adversaries. This operation, while kinetically sound, also serves as an undeniable justification for sustained funding for major naval and air assets. It silences critics who argue for divesting from legacy platforms, even as those platforms, when properly deployed and sustained, remain potent instruments of national power. The defense industry, always watching, sees every deployment as a proof of concept, a tacit endorsement for future contracts, ensuring the continued flow of taxpayer dollars into its coffers, often at the expense of true innovation or cost-effective solutions for the warfighter. The strategic doctrine underpinning such a deployment is rooted in classic deterrence theory, but applied in a modern, multi-domain context. For decades, American doctrine in the Middle East has attempted to balance forward presence with the need to avoid entanglement. This new operation, however, leans heavily into the former, re-emphasizing the concept of anti-access/area denial, A2/AD reversal, where adversaries like Iran have invested heavily in layered defenses, missiles, drones, fast attack craft, and mines, designed to deny access to critical waterways and airspaces. The U.S. response must be to demonstrate an undeniable capacity to pierce those defenses, to hold targets at risk across the entire operational theater, and to dictate the pace and scale of any potential conflict. This is about projecting an unacceptable cost onto any aggressor. The sheer volume of precision-guided munitions, advanced electronic warfare capabilities, and network sensor systems deployed within this force package fundamentally alters the adversary's risk assessment. It moves the needle from manageable harassment to catastrophic retaliation in an instant. But the global consequences of such a move are complex and multifaceted. For Tehran, this is a clear message. The leash has tightened. The window for destabilizing actions, whether through proxy militias in Iraq and Syria, Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, or direct threats to Gulf shipping, has dramatically narrowed. Their reaction will be carefully calibrated, a mixture of defiant rhetoric for domestic consumption and clandestine maneuvering in the gray zone, testing the boundaries of American resolve without inviting direct, overwhelming retaliation. Simultaneously, other regional actors, our allies in the Gulf, Israel, will see this as a renewed commitment, potentially strengthening their own security cooperation with Washington, but also raising concerns about the potential for broader regional escalation. More broadly, near-peer adversaries like China and Russia will be watching intently. For Beijing, it's a case study in U.S. power projection capabilities, offering insights into how Washington might respond to similar challenges in the Indo-Pacific. For Moscow, it's an opportunity to exploit any perceived distraction or misstep, particularly in Eastern Europe or the Arctic. The ripple effect on global energy markets, though often downplayed, is also a critical factor, as any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz sends shockwaves through the world economy. Behind the scenes, within the ear-ring of the Pentagon and across the combatant commands, the reality of this surge deployment is a testament to the enduring capabilities of the U.S. military, but also a stark reminder of the immense strain placed upon its resources. Years of prioritizing ideological diversity initiatives over basic warfighting skills, coupled with protracted engagements in counterinsurgency operations, have degraded readiness across various platforms and specialties. While the top-tier units remain highly proficient, the long tail of the force faces challenges in maintenance, spare parts, and consistent training cycles. Deploying a full carrier strike group and its attendant assets is an enormous logistical undertaking, pulling resources from other theaters and potentially deferring maintenance schedules on other critical platforms. There's a constant internal tension between the strategic ambition of political leadership and the logistical realities faced by uniformed officers responsible for actual kinetic operations. This say-do gap is a pervasive problem where lofty policy pronouncements often collide with the grinding realities of manning, training, and equipping a global force. Decisions made years ago regarding force structure, procurement, and even personnel policies are now manifesting as either critical enablers or significant vulnerabilities in moments of crisis like this. Consider the historical precedent of naval power projection in similar contexts. The tanker war of the late 1980s, culminating in Operation Praying Mantis, provides a critical case study. When Iranian mine-laying operations escalated, threatening global shipping, the U.S. Navy executed a swift, decisive response that dismantled significant portions of Iran's naval infrastructure. It was a clear demonstration of naval superiority, conducted with precision and without excessive entanglement, ultimately restoring freedom of navigation. Fast forward to today, and while the technology has advanced exponentially, the underlying strategic challenge remains eerily similar: how to deter an asymmetrical threat without inadvertently sparking a wider conflict. This new operation draws from that playbook, but with a heightened emphasis on multi-domain integration and real-time intelligence fusion, demonstrating how far our capabilities have evolved, despite the internal headwinds. However, the question of long-term implications for U.S. global supremacy cannot be ignored. Is this operation a temporary fix, a reactive measure to a festering wound, or is it part of a grander strategy to fundamentally realign America's global force posture? The shift from a post-Cold War unipolar moment to a rapidly evolving multipolar world demands a clear-eyed reassessment of where and how America commits its finite resources. The pivot to Asia, while strategically vital for confronting a rising China, cannot come at the expense of stability in other critical regions. Every deployment, every strategic decision in one theater invariably impacts another. This new operation, while necessary in the immediate context, also underscores the challenge of maintaining global strategic overmatch when facing determined adversaries in multiple theaters simultaneously, all while battling internal bureaucratic inefficiencies and a defense acquisition system often characterized by cost overruns and delayed deliveries. The sheer complexity of modern military operations, demanding seamless interoperability between various service branches and often allied forces, places immense pressure on command and control structures. The coordination required for this type of multi-domain operation, integrating naval aviation, surface combatants, submarines, ground-based air defenses, cyber command elements, and special operations forces, is a masterclass in operational planning. Yet, it also highlights vulnerabilities. A single point of failure in communication, a lapse in intelligence fusion, or an unexpected technological glitch can have cascading effects across the entire operational picture. The human element, the training and readiness of the warfighters themselves, becomes paramount. Are our troops receiving the cutting-edge training necessary to operate these sophisticated systems effectively under extreme stress? Or are resources being diverted to fulfill administrative mandates that have no bearing on kinetic lethality? This brings us back to the persistent shadow cast by the military-industrial complex and the entrenched bureaucracy within the Pentagon. The pursuit of interoperability often becomes a buzzword for purchasing more expensive, proprietary systems from a limited pool of defense contractors, rather than investing in open-source solutions or truly agile, adaptable platforms. The incentive structure within the defense establishment, too, often rewards the acquisition of new, shiny objects over the long-term maintenance and sustainment of existing, proven systems. This operation, undoubtedly showcasing advanced platforms, implicitly validates those acquisition strategies, even if the underlying cost-benefit analysis is often obscured by layers of classified information and corporate lobbying. The true cost of projecting this power, in terms of deferred maintenance on other critical assets or the drain on personnel readiness from extended deployments, is rarely factored into the public narrative. Further, we must dissect the motivations beyond immediate deterrence. Could this operation also serve as a strategic messaging exercise for domestic audiences, signaling resolve during a period of geopolitical uncertainty and internal political flux? Or is it a more subtle test of adversary reaction thresholds, probing for weaknesses in their command and control, their air defense networks, or their ability to sustain a long-term asymmetric response? This kind of high-stakes military gambit is rarely monochromatic. There are always multiple layers of intent, both declared and undeclared, operating simultaneously. The E-ring understands this implicitly. While public statements might focus on stability and freedom of navigation, the internal intelligence assessments are focused on pattern-of-life analysis, critical infrastructure vulnerabilities, and the development of contingency plans for every imaginable escalation scenario. This is the reality of grand strategy, a constant interplay between overt actions and covert intentions, designed to shape the geopolitical landscape without necessarily inviting direct confrontation. Consider the ongoing challenge of gray zone warfare, where adversaries operate below the threshold of conventional armed conflict, using proxies, cyber attacks, and disinformation campaigns to achieve strategic objectives. A powerful conventional deployment, like the one currently underway, is explicitly designed to counter these gray zone tactics by raising the perceived cost of continued mischief. It's a message that while adversaries may believe they can operate with impunity in the shadows, the United States retains the capacity and the will to respond with overwhelming conventional force if those activities cross a critical red line. The inherent danger, of course, is miscalculation. Both sides walk a tightrope, attempting to assert dominance without triggering an uncontrollable cascade of events. This requires constant, high-fidelity intelligence gathering and meticulous diplomatic backchannels, capabilities that have themselves been subject to bureaucratic pruning and ideological interference within our own intelligence communities. The very concept of maximum alert for an adversary like Iran also warrants deeper examination. What does that truly mean in an operational context? Does it imply a surge in their own defensive posture, activating air defense systems, dispersing naval assets, and mobilizing ground forces? Or does it primarily involve heightened alert levels for their intelligence services, attempting to discern the full scope and intent of a U.S. deployment? Historically, when faced with such overt shows of force, states often react in predictable patterns: increased rhetoric, internal consolidation of power, and often an attempt to activate proxy networks to demonstrate continued reach without directly engaging the primary adversary. This operation isn't just about deterring Iran. It's about shaping its behavior, forcing it to expend resources, and creating a degree of strategic paralysis as it tries to decipher Washington's long-term objectives. Moreover, the effectiveness of any military operation is profoundly influenced by the political will behind it. A robust deployment, however technically sophisticated, loses its deterrent effect if adversaries perceive a lack of sustained political resolve in Washington. The politicization of military leadership, the constant churn of civilian defense appointees, and the pervasive influence of partisan debates on national security issues all contribute to a perceived vacillation that can be exploited by adversaries. For this operation to truly succeed in its strategic objectives, it requires not just kinetic superiority, but also unwavering political messaging and a clear, consistent grand strategy that transcends electoral cycles. This is often the most significant challenge for the American defense establishment, translating raw military power into lasting geopolitical advantage when its own political class is frequently fractured and distracted. The long-term implications for U.S. global supremacy hinge on whether this operation marks a genuine recalibration of strategy or merely another temporary surge. For too long, the administrative defense state has been permitted to grow unwieldy, prioritizing diversity and inclusion mandates over warfighting proficiency, and allowing a revolving door with defense contractors to blur the lines between public service and private profit. This has contributed to a quiet erosion of the very lethality that defines American military power. This powerful new operation, while a necessary demonstration of force, is also an expensive bandage over deeper structural wounds. It showcases what the U.S. military can still do, but also tacitly highlights the increasing effort required to achieve deterrence that once felt more inherent. As the dust settles over the Persian Gulf, and the strategic ripples extend across continents, we are left to ponder whether this decisive demonstration of force truly resets the scales of deterrence, or merely delays the inevitable reckoning with a defense establishment that has prioritized administrative comfort over the raw, kinetic lethality essential for the survival of the Republic. What does this operation tell us about the future of global warfare and U.S. defense institutions, And can America truly maintain its global preeminence without a ruthless internal focus on warfighter readiness, strategic realism, and an uncompromising commitment to kinetic superiority?